I have something that happened to me around 2 years ago, and I still cannot explain it. Please bear with me, because it's a pretty heavy subject for me, and with how crazy all of it was, my memory is not really the clearest anymore. I will start by saying that 2 years ago, I was at the absolute lowest point of my life. I was 18 years old, and I had been suffering pretty badly with depression for as long as I could remember. I had been slaving away at a shitty job for pennies for the last 2 years, and all I could think was, I cannot take another 60 years of this. This is an oversimplification, of course. I'm not here to give you a sob story. I had a lot more going on in my head and in my life, a lot more than I really care to mention, actually. I just wanted to make it clear why I went to the extremes that I did. One night, I guess it all just got way too much for me. I had all these heavy thoughts swirling around in my head, every single little thing, every time someone tried to talk to me, any little action that they did, good or bad, it just felt overwhelming. I was in a very manic state. I had never gotten any help. I was too scared of being judged and having that label hanging over me for the rest of my life. I was scared that people would not see me when they looked at me, that they would only see my illness. I also did not want to be seen as a person making things up and exaggerating to make it seem like my life was harder than anyone else's, or that I deserved an easier life just on principle. My heart was going a million miles a minute. I could not even think straight, and even just someone sending me a message or trying to talk to me, even if they were not being rude, it sent me into a furious, spiraling state. I was an ass, and I knew I was being an ass, but it was like I could not control it. Even just minutes after the fact, I could sit back and think, yeah, that wasn't really nice or called for, but in the moment, it was like it was set in stone and I could not stop myself. I took my car and I went for a long, long drive. It was pretty late at night, maybe around 3 a.m. or so. I wasn't even planning on doing anything reckless or ending up where I was, but it just happened. I ended up on a pretty major bridge in my city. I'm not going to mention the city, but I don't think it will be hard to narrow it down. I slowed and I parked up. I started thinking about all of the people who would jump from here. I started wondering what it would feel like, if it might feel blissful to finally have peace and quiet inside my head. I was imagining how much lighter and happier I would feel if in just 1 second I could make it all stop. There was no one around at all to stop me. I got out of my car and I went and I peered over the side. There was water there, but also a lot of hard ground and rock. I was thinking it over in my head. If I was going to do it, I had to be sure. I couldn't survive because then my life would just be worse. I climbed up onto the side of the bridge, and I ever so slowly got up to my feet. I was just staring down. I felt really nervous. I really just wanted the noise to stop, but I was scared it would not work. It was so far down, I was feeling nauseous just staring at the bottom, but at the same time, there was a small part of me telling me just to do it, telling me that it would all be okay. I kind of zoned out for a while, staring at the same spot down below until my vision became blurry. I tried to imagine I was a ghost, watching people after I had passed away. I was trying to imagine how people would react, if the world would be a better place. And, well, I closed my eyes, and then I held my breath. I clenched my fists really tightly, and then I just let myself fall. I wanted to keep my eyes closed to stop myself from panicking, but they shot open instinctively. I fell so quickly, the wind burned against my eyes and they were watering immediately. I could see the ground coming up so quickly. I was scared that I made the wrong choice. I wanted to go back. I never wanted to die. I just wanted my problems to be gone. I just didn't think I could fix them. Time seemed to slow down in that moment. I had an age to think on the way down, to think about everything that I would miss out on. The music I loved that I would never hear again, the girlfriend who I would never see. She would probably blame herself. I probably ruined her life. I was still falling and falling. That was until I got about halfway down. I don't really know how to explain it, but I could feel that I was not actually falling anymore. I could see that the ground was not getting any closer. Everything around me was just frozen. I could no longer see the water rippling and waves moving. That wind was no longer blowing. I tried to see if I could move, but I couldn't. The only thing that I could move was my eyes. I was completely fixed to the spot. This is where things start to become strange. None of the sounds of the world were present at all, so when I heard this horrible sound that filled my stomach with dread, I panicked and started to shoot my eyes around back and forth to figure out what was going on. The sound, I am not really sure how to describe it. It was like a really deep vibration sound, really guttural and bassy. When I heard it, I could actually feel it in my body, and it made me feel fear. If you've ever played the game Mass Effect, and you've heard the sound that the Reapers make, that is the closest possible thing I can use to describe the sound that I heard, and the feeling that it drove into me. I flicked my eyes around, and just at the very edge of my vision on the right, I could see something coming out from the sky, right through the heavy clouds. It was some kind of light or beam. It made my eyes sore because I had to push them and strain them all the way to the edge of their sockets just to see this. I saw a big beam in like a cone shape of some kind of light. It was almost like a spotlight, except it was tinted ever so slightly in a red hue. And then I saw something descend from this light. I could not make it out properly because to me, it just looked like a hulking mass of shadow floating in the air that had wings of some kind. And when it started to shoot towards me, that is when I really panicked. It moved quicker than I could even comprehend. 1 second, it was all the way away from me. The next second, I could feel the impact as this thing collided with my body and sunk something sharp into my body. I could feel it immediately, that sharp stinging burn. I could not even cry out because nothing would come out of my mouth. My vocal cords would not work. I could still only move my eyes. I could see the sky moving in front of my face so quickly as we rose further and further upwards. We got closer and closer to that red beam of light until it was finally engulfing me and was almost blinding. My vision stayed red for quite a while, until that color of red was slowly bleeding away and gave way to what I can only describe as a sort of gray as far as the eye could see. I was standing on solid ground now, and that horrible thing was nowhere in sight. The ground was made out of some kind of stone, and it was that same slate gray as the surroundings, as the sky. I had a shooting pain in my chest, I guess where I had been grabbed, and when I pulled up my shirt, I almost screamed. There was a hole in my chest, not like something had torn away my flesh, but there was just a big circular hole, and all that was sitting there was a black void. I tried to touch it, to reach my hand in, but when I tried, my hand just disappeared from sight, and all I felt was this strange, cold sensation. The place that I was, it was unnaturally quiet. I could not hear the sound of anything all around. I finally had time to think and just hear my own thoughts. Only, my head was silent now too. Recalling it now is impossible, but at the time, whenever I looked and I saw something, I felt nothing. In retrospect, I can feel things and imagine what I would feel, but in that moment, I felt nothing. I thought nothing. I would usually have my inner monologue running at 1,000,000 miles a minute, either about the things right in front of me or things completely unrelated. My mind was constantly caught in multiple places, zipping from one thought to the next. Ever since I was a little kid, I had never had a moment of peace from my brain. The only escape was sleep, and even that didn't work because of the overactive dreams. But now, there was just nothing inside of there. I smiled. I felt happy, I think. I thought that it was finally over, and that I now had all the time in the world just to rest. And when I say thought, I don't mean literally, because, like I said, There was no inner monologue. I wasn't actually thinking. It was just, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, thinking about it now, I just knew, but at the time, I just felt nothing. I know it makes no sense whatsoever, but just bear with me. I wandered around for what felt like a few minutes, but everything just looked the same. I just walked, and I looked, and I just felt so empty and cold. There were other people there, actual people, humans just like me, if you could still call them that, I guess. I saw one man sitting with his back resting up against some kind of grey stone pillar. Another man I saw laid down flat on his back, with his arms almost hugging himself. The more I looked into the horizon, the more I could see all sorts of people in different positions, just not moving, not talking. I went up close to one of the men, the one sat upright. He was not even breathing. His skin was this sickly pale color, and I noticed that he was not wearing any clothes at all. But aside from his eyes, the rest of his skin was just empty. It was covered over completely smoothly and was now just skin, blank skin, without any imperfections or any features. There was no hair on his arms, none on his head. His eyes just looked completely devoid of life. He was shooting them around, back and forth, sometimes looking at me, sometimes looking off into the distance, but that was it. Each and every single person, every body that I found looked exactly like this. And again, I just felt nothing looking down at these people. I just got down onto my knees, and then I laid down onto the floor. I was half expecting it to feel really cold, but it just felt like nothing. I felt numb to everything. My body felt really light, almost like it was a cloud, and nothing felt like anything. I felt no passage of time. I could have been laid down on that floor for just a few minutes, or maybe it was weeks. I would not be able to tell you. But eventually, that thing came back. When I was falling, I felt fear. I wanted to get away from this thing as quickly as I possibly could. But now, I just stared at this thing blankly. I could see more of it, but at the same time, I felt like I could see less of it. I know that does not make sense, but I have trouble explaining the feeling after the fact. It was like my eyes could not actually zero in on the thing and truly see it for what it was. If I focused intently on one part of this thing, say the hands, it was like the rest of it was all blurry and out of focus. In some parts of it I could not decipher, no matter how long I stared. It was like I was perpetually looking at this thing through my peripheral vision, even though I was actually staring at this thing dead on. It had a very vague, human-like silhouette, though its legs were much too thin to be like a human's, and they did not look strong enough to support its weight. It walked with this really weird gait and was almost bow-legged. I could not make out most of its face aside from those really dark eyes that seemed to almost pulse a lighter color every so often that made it seem like they lit up just for a second. This thing strolled over to me without a single word, sunk its claw or whatever it had on its hands up into my pectorals, then proceeded to lift me without any effort. I did not feel a thing. With the angle I was held at, and the way this thing was carrying me above itself, outstretched, it was like I was a newborn baby being lifted up underneath the arms. It hovered ever so slightly off the ground, and we floated very slowly along the way. It only seemed like seconds of hovering, but it could have been hours, and then the thing just came to a halt. We were hovering over the edge of the stone ground, which I didn't think was possible. It seemed like it went on forever when I looked, but now, we were at the edge. This thing slowly sank back down onto the ground, but continued to hold me over the edge of the place. All I could see below me was a black void. And then the thing talked. Not out loud, but actually inside my head, as if it was my own internal monologue. My head had been empty for so long, it almost felt alien to hear something inside of there. It felt, I'm not sure. I had really conflicting feelings. And I remember them very clearly because it was like when this thing started talking inside my head that I could think again. that all my feelings were coming back stronger and I didn't feel entirely numb anymore. It was like the thing allowed me to feel just for this conversation. But yeah, at first it felt really grating. It made me want to cower away and crawl back onto the ground and just lay there in peace. But at the same time, it sparked this really weird feeling in me. This feeling of hope. This feeling of just wanting to go home. The voice was like nothing I had ever heard before. At times, the voice sounded so booming that it was actually hard to make out entire words. It sounded as if someone had only ever seen the language written down on paper and was slowly adjusting its voice as it learned. It asked me a question. Do you feel peace? That was the very first thing it ever asked me. I didn't know how to answer this because at that very moment, I didn't think I could actually think anymore. I thought that my thoughts were still not turned on. I couldn't move either. It was just staring at me deep in my eyes while holding me over the edge. And then it continued. It said, "You can have another chance, but only this once. You broke the order. You made the others angry." It continued staring at me for a long time, while all I could do was just look and dart my eyes back and forth. It just stared into them, tilting its head from side to side. It was talking and continuing the conversation as if I was responding, but I wasn't. What if he was reading the wrong thing? What if the response that he saw from me was not what I wanted? And that is when I realized that I was thinking once again. I was thinking, and I was panicking. I was not supposed to be here. It was like it had now just dawned on me where I actually was. The voice continued. It told me that I had to agree to the rules. It never even told me the fucking rules. He told me I had to spread the word. I still do not know what that means. I can feel tears pouring into my eyes at this point, and this thing, it just ever so slowly removes its grip, and I just fall. I fall so quickly. In just a second flat, I can no longer see that thing's face. I cannot see that place anymore. I'm falling through pitch black darkness, and I can feel the heavy weight of gravity on my body. I feel like I'm being stretched and contorted, and like every part of my body is being pulled with an insane force. And then it all just stops really quickly, as if I had come to a sudden stop after colliding with something. 1 second, there is just blackness. The next second, I am looking down at the ocean right below me, and I can see my foot scooting towards the edge. I'm on autopilot. My heart sinks, and I panic, and this makes my other foot slip, and I fall down onto my ass, and I am grabbing onto the side railing for dear life. 1 more second, and I would have been falling, and my life would have been over. I just sat there on the side of that bridge for maybe 5 minutes straight, just sweating and panting and trying to calm myself down. Once I finally felt like I had the energy to pull myself back over, I did so, and then I went and sat in my car for I'm not sure how long. I still was not even properly thinking at that point. The rush of adrenaline made it hard for me to do much more than just exist. After that, I drove home, slowly, making sure to take a longer route so that I could just stare out the window at the nature all around me. I'm not gonna sit here after the fact and pretend like I am cured and that my life is all sunshine and rainbows now, because it's not. I thought about suicide many, many times after that day, but I've never attempted it ever again. I have never attempted it because I do not want to see that place ever again. I don't know where I went to or what that thing even was, but all I know is that I want to stay as far away as humanly possible. I don't even want answers. I just want to stay here. I have a story for you all that I'm going to try and keep short and simple. I work for the police force, and we got a call from some terrified neighbors about hearing some gunshots coming from a farm just a mile or so away. It was owned by an older man. I think he was in his 50s. They had apparently heard gunshots and some screaming, but that was it. Any attempts to call his house phone failed, and no one wanted to risk going out to his property in the dark to check on him. Myself and another officer were the first ones on the scene. It was a fairly rural area, and I was nearby, since it was near to where I was patrolling. That's mostly what I did. I would drive local roads and respond to anything nearby, sometimes heading into some of the smaller towns or back roads, or patrolling down nearby highways. We heard gunshots coming from the house, and we had to have our weapons drawn and ready. I saw the farmer rip open his front door, shotgun in hand. Then he threw a small girl down the stairs that led up to the house and shouted at her not to move. I saw him fire one more shot inside his home, and then, as he was locking the door, we both announced ourselves and moved into position. We asked him to drop the gun and then get down to the ground so that we could secure the area. He started begging us to understand. He practically had tears in his eyes. He told us that there was something inside his house trying to kill him. That was really strange. He said something and not someone, like we were led to believe. When I asked him to clarify what he meant, all he could tell us was that it was not human. We asked him again to clarify, and he got insanely aggressive and started shouting at us, telling us to do our damn jobs and deal with the thing inside his home. He was clearly having some kind of an episode and was not listening to reason. Even if he was telling us the truth and there was some kind of animal inside of there, we could not just allow him to keep his gun in a situation like this and turn our backs to him. It's just not a risk that we are ever allowed to take. Plus, we did not see any signs of an animal, no commotion, no nothing. All we had to go on was this man waving a gun around and shooting with a little girl nearby. You never know how quickly a situation might turn or what someone is even thinking inside of their head. The little girl down on the ground was sobbing and saying, "Let them help us, Grandpa. I want to go home." She had dirt all down the front of her dress and was just a complete mess. It looked like she had been rolling around in the forest for hours. I told the girl to run towards us carefully while keeping my gun pointed at the man, but he was much too close. He ran down the steps and grabbed her before I had a safe opening to put him down. He grabbed her around the neck and told us that we could not take her from him, that he was the only person who could protect her properly. The girl could barely breathe and was just choking out a, "Please, Grandpa, you're hurting me." He looked angry now. He told us that we were not to come any closer at all. He never actually threatened to kill her outright. I don't think he wanted to, but he was very clearly using the implication to get us to back off. By now, more cars had pulled up, and he was just inching his way over to his farmhouse and screaming at everybody to get back or else. By the time the rest of the officers swarmed in, the man was at the farmhouse and we could not risk anything. The chance of the little girl being killed in the crossfire was pretty much 100%. He told everyone that he was not leaving that farmhouse until it was safe. He told us to help them and that then he would come along quietly. It left all of us really baffled. He ended up barricading the farmhouse shut, and after that, we did not see him for a while. Everything escalated from there. SWAT teams, hostage negotiator. But he did not actually want anything. He just kept rambling on about protecting the little girl and making sure that thing did not get her. He just would not fucking clarify what he meant either. He just kept on using vague descriptors like not human and something about it tricking its way into their home. He kept saying to check the house. Well, we had no choice but to check the house after some of the sounds that we heard. At first, we just heard this really faint sniffing sound. Officers were already moving into place, while the rest of us held firm at the barricade line, just waiting for the order to move in, or for the man to finally come to his senses. The sniffing sound only got louder, coming from the direction to the house. Once the other officers got right up to the door, there was a crash and a thud, and then we heard some kind of animal noise really far off in the distance, actually coming from behind us in the opposite direction of this crash. The animal noise sounded like your standard coyote, and I don't think it was related at all. It seemed a lot more like coincidence than anything else. The noise near the house sounded like glass being smashed with a lot of force, and then it sounded like something quite heavy fell to the ground. The man obviously could hear that too from where he was, and he was now panicking harder, telling us how it was coming for him and his granddaughter, that we had to stop it, that it would not stop until it was satisfied. We gave our best efforts to calm the man down and reassure him that we had control of the scene and that nothing bad was going to happen to either of them, but still, he would not let up. The officers secured the entire home. I was not told the whole story, but I know that they did not find evidence of another man being in there. They said that there was a ton of dirt and a small amount of some blood-like substance were the specific words that I heard. Said that there were some obvious boot prints embedded into the carpet, along with what looked like some really long toes. The outline of them had apparently been pressed into the rug in the living room with some force, and they had clearly been covered in mud. The window to the upstairs bedroom was smashed, and it led to the backside of the property. There were no tracks down onto the floor, or any evidence of a man. No one could explain it. This is when things took a major turn for the worst. The man starts panicking and going into a spiel, saying things like, "Can't you hear it? It's so close. It's almost here. Please, you have to help me. It's about to get in." We could not see or hear anything in the area. I can hear the little girl sobbing, and she was begging for us to help too, asking us to make the horrible man go away. Then this next part all just happened so quickly. I heard what sounded like wood creaking, like something heavy putting all of its weight on a plank of wood. Then I just hear a sudden snap, like the wood just gave way. Still, we could not see anything, but we could hear the man screaming. He screamed out, "It's here," and we could see the front door of the farmhouse just rattling. I think he was fumbling to move whatever he was using to barricade himself inside, because I could hear him grunting and struggling to breathe over the sounds of the little girl screaming. There was not anything that we could do in time. It was still a completely unknown situation. The man had a gun. There was a great risk that if we rushed in, then either one of us would die, one of them would die, or both. There were no signs of an intruder that we could see. We had no reason to believe it was anything other than the man's delusions once again. We just hear creak, creak, a really heavy step, then 2 gunshot blasts coming from the man's shotgun in quick succession. Both the man and the little girl screamed at the same time these blasts came, but they seemed to be cut off right in the middle. And then there was just silence. We got no answer coming from the man for quite a long time, and we really feared the worst. We could not hear any sounds at all coming from inside the farmhouse anymore, and so the orders were given for it to be opened up and swept and cleared. Both the man and the little girl, they were both dead. They were both lying down, slumped up against the wall, with the little girl still clinging onto her grandpa for dear life. Neither of them had any fucking gunshot wounds. That is the part that is still seared into my mind. The girl, I have no idea how she died. I could not see any visible wounds on her. I never got to see any kind of coroner's report. The man, though, he had these deep cuts going along his chest. If it was from a knife, then the knife must have been the size of my arm because the wounds looked so severe. Man, I can still see the image of those 2 in my mind whenever I go to sleep. That poor, scared little girl clinging to her dead grandfather. I was never clued in, so I did not figure out what happened. There was no evidence of a second person there. There was not much evidence to suggest anything other than a murder-suicide after the man had a psychotic break, but that did not add up either. There was not enough evidence for that either. I guess they just went with whatever explanation was the least implausible. I don't know. The case could still be active for all I know. I never really got to see the end of it. All I know is that the entire area within a few miles of the place was swept and locked down, and no evidence was found to suggest someone fleeing from the place or breaking and entering. Who fucking knows though? To this day, this was the absolute strangest case I have ever had the displeasure of being involved in. I just wish I had some kind of answers